Hey everyone, I'm Tyler Karras and this is the Independent Network. On today's show, we will go in depth with Dr. Herl and the District Health Director about the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the ISD, the biggest factor that will determine if we go fully virtual, why we went ahead with winter sports despite recommendations from health experts, and what second semester will look like. All that plus a couple of feel-good accomplishments around the district. December could see the highest number of COVID cases in the district so far this school year. Day-to-day numbers have been consistently higher than at any other point. According to our data tracking, the 63 active cases posted to the district dashboard on Thursday, December 17th, set a new high. The previous high was 61, which occurred twice in our analysis, from the first week after Thanksgiving break to this current week. Cases have been rising exponentially according to our data tracking. Recently, we spoke with Dr. Herl and the District Director of Health Services about a variety of topics related to the impact of COVID on the district. Both spoke positively on how the district has handled things up to this point, which they say gives them faith moving forward.
As of right now, I think that school will look very similar to what it did first semester, that we will continue to have activities, we will continue to have school, more than likely start the second semester within the hybrid setting, and certainly K through 5 being fully in person. Unfortunately, with COVID, things seem to change at times almost daily, but right now that is our plan. Everything that we've done in the past has been very successful. Both the number of COVID cases as well as the quarantines have really been very low, especially compared to other school districts. So I think that shows that our protocols really are working. So moving forward, the plans would be to continue to do what we're doing since we've been so successful, and I look forward to a great second semester.
School districts around the ISD like Blue Springs and Lee Summit decided to transition at least middle school and high school students from in-person to all virtual after Thanksgiving. Blue Springs had concerns about the rising cases in the wake of the holiday. Lee Summit said they started to see spread within the schools. Dr. Herl says in-school spread will serve as the factor for the ISD when making the decision to go fully virtual.
I know there's some that use particular gating protocols. I prefer to use metrics that are within the ISD, and that would be situations in which we would be having transmission within the schools. And up to this point, we are not having transmission within our schools. So until that would happen, I don't see a situation that the ISD would go fully virtual unless it was mandated by another entity.
The Jackson County Health Department is one such entity that could push schools to close. We talked to a spokesman for the department who says right now their priority is helping schools make good decisions, but if need be, that they could step in.
So the health department can go ahead and do a health order. We've done that in the past. We've also worked with the county executive to do executive orders, and we can take those steps if it's necessary. Right now we are rather working with the schools and offering recommendations, but if it's something that we need to do, it is a possibility. Right now we do really prioritize schools, and we understand that there is a lot of benefit to in-person learning, so we're trying to balance out the risk associated with that, but also the benefits that students get from being in the classroom.
Over the course of this semester, the district allowed more students to return full-time school to receive the benefit of in-person learning. The district health director says they don't believe we saw any significant increase in cases after more students returned.
I don't think we've seen an increase that wouldn't be, wouldn't coincide with what we're seeing at the county level. So certainly there's been an increase, but there's been an increase in the entire county. I don't think it is all related to the number of students that we have at school. We have wonderful practices in place of keeping people socially distanced and safe, and we're seeing that it's very effective. And in fact, we're doing much better than as the county as a whole.
Halsey says that there was some concern about cases rising in the wake of Thanksgiving gatherings, but that the district continues to see proportionally less than an increase than Jackson County as a whole.
In the school environment, we're not seeing a rise because that would be community spread, and that's what we're looking at as a school district is it spreading within our schools. It's certainly going to spread in the county, which affects our schools, and the county would definitely say they're seeing that.
We asked exactly how the district will know if community spread is indeed happening in the schools. We were told the contact tracing protocols in place would allow them to see if there's any overlap between cases, which would indicate the virus was spreading in the schools. The district's COVID dashboard is not as how the public can stay up to date on current cases. It lists active cases, meaning people who are considered contagious. Once a person is deemed eligible to come out of quarantines, their case is removed from the dashboard. Halsey says the district keeps a running record of total cases, but that doesn't get published publicly.
We are tracking and posting on the dashboard active cases because that's what's relevant to this situation right now when you're in school. So that's what we make public and make available.
We asked Halsey how the districts can be confident their numbers are accurate. She told us they are accurate based on the people tested, but pointing out that there is no way to know if people don't get tested. The district does not require testing, even for those exposed to someone who's positive. They only suggest testing. But Dr. Herl says if you know anyone who could have COVID, tell an administrator. With that in mind, the district wants to remind students and staff to stay home if you're feeling sick. They also want you not to come to school while awaiting COVID-19 test results for you or anyone in your household. Staff and students experiencing COVID symptoms can receive a rapid test at the district employee health clinic. As for district totals thus far, while the district doesn't release that information, the state of Missouri does. There is a lag in releasing the data, but according to the state's dashboard, December 9th, 512 positive cases have come out of children and teens who live within the ISD boundaries since the pandemic began. That is fifth most according to districts in Jackson County, but it does trail neighboring ones like Lee Summit and Blue Springs. Despite COVID, winter sports and games begin after Thanksgiving. The Jackson County Health Department actually recommended not doing winter sports because of how easily the coronavirus can spread indoors. The State Activities Association told us that they recommend schools follow their local health guidelines. Dr. Herl says the decision to proceed with winter sports anyway boiled down to giving the students the choice.
Well, overall, we want to make sure that kids have opportunities to participate if at all possible. And there have been a lot of recommendations that have come out from the county. We always try to follow CDC guidelines, and at no point has the CDC ever stated that we should not have activities. So we looked at both the pros and cons of this, and we really wanted to ensure that student athletes or in any activity, if they wanted to participate, knowing that there are potential increased likelihood that COVID could be possible, but they could still participate. That really needs to be, in my opinion, a parent and a student choice.
Restrictions remain in place for winter sports. Athletes must wear masks when not playing. Coaches must wear them at all times. Attendance at games and matches is limited to 2 immediate family members per participant. Dr. Herl says that while winter sports pose new challenges, there are some things the district can take away from what happened during the fall sports seasons.
What I think we learned from the fall sports, number one, it's possible to have them occur, that there will be a possibility you may have COVID cases that we have to quarantine either individuals or even in some instances entire teams. But overall, if you follow protocols and you put safety first of the participants, it can happen and it can be done successfully. The new difficulty, certainly with winter sports, you're inside, so that creates some issues that we didn't have maybe during football or soccer season. So that is one thing. The other is, as of right now, we do see instances where COVID cases are starting to increase, so we have to just be even more diligent about our safety protocols.
As we're seeing with sports on the professional and the collegiate level, COVID will force schools to become flexible when it comes to scheduling during winter seasons. For instance, Chrisman scrambled to find a replacement for the Fog Allen Invitational earlier this month after a team needed to quarantine. If an ISD team or athlete needed to isolate, Dr. Herl says that they would simply resume their season after their quarantine has ended. As for what happens if case counts forced ISD schools to go fully virtual, Dr. Herl says that will address it if it happens.
If we would go all virtual, that's just something that at that time we're going to have to look at on how we handle winter sports. We have not had any of those discussions at this point.
Before Thanksgiving, the Jackson County Health Department issued new guidelines and recommendations for winter sports. Independent Network's Reagan Keltner talked with a spokesman about them, as well as what happens if schools decide not to follow them.
The health department recently updated its guidelines for schools to include recommendations for winter sports. What led to these new recommendations, and how are they different from the ones for fall sports?
Yeah, so that's one thing to note is fall sports, a lot of them are outside. So we see with football, for example, there's the indoor versus outdoor component is something that we took into consideration, and they're able to have that and more airflow and ventilation when you're outside. And so that was a big component that allowed fall sports to continue on as they had been, although we did recommend limiting those interactions whenever possible, limiting spectators. When we considered the winter sports, we had to take into account several things. The first was, of course, that indoor component. Also, just the fact that we have an increased community transmission throughout the Kansas City metro area. And so while we were kind of slowing off in the fall and summer months, we really picked back up again. And we had to look at, hey, is this something that we really can support? And what do we value the most? And what we value the most is in-person education. And so we had to say, hey, if we're going to support that, can we really support athletics as well? Can we keep up with the flow of cases in our contact tracing process? And one of the things we came to was that school athletics probably shouldn't be going on during this time because of those increased risk factors associated with those winter sports and the close contact we're seeing, the inability for a lot of those winter sports to wear masks, those different things, as well as that combined with the increased transmission. And so we issued those recommendations in hopes that we could limit some of that community spread.
How can the health department make sure schools follow these guidelines?
So these are guidelines, and it's something that it is up to the school ultimately to make those decisions. Along with our recommendations to not have winter sports, we also gave mitigation advice. So there are things that students and staff can do, such as cohorting their students, which would be such as keeping student athletes in one classroom and keeping them away from the general population in case there was an outbreak associated with those athletics. And there's several other mitigation factors, such as increasing ventilation, providing social distancing, wearing masks when possible, things like that, that we really recommend if the schools decide not to take our recommendations and proceed with winter sports anyways, that they can still lower the chances of those outbreaks occurring. So we definitely understand it is a difficult decision for schools to make, and we want them to be as safe as possible, even if they do decide to proceed with having those winter sports.
With the new guidelines, will schools have to face any repercussions if they do not comply with them?
No, they're just guidelines, and it's something we're in regular conversation with the superintendents of the schools. And so we want to see where everyone's at and make sure that they are taking appropriate precautions where they can. But there's not repercussions right now. They are just recommendations. So it's something that we strongly recommend. But at the end of the day, it is the school's decision.
How does the health department feel about schools in the county continue on with winter sports, even though the health department recommended against it?
Like I said, it's a hard decision, and we totally acknowledge that. It's something where we know a lot of students are really looking forward to participating in those winter sports, and it's something that is really important, and we totally acknowledge that. We just have to balance that out with the risks associated with it. So we understand why schools and students may continue to participate in winter sports. And that's why we decided to issue recommendations of how to mitigate the risk, along with our recommendation not to host it, because we know that a lot of schools will go ahead and decide to continue on with winter sports, and we want to make sure that they're taking those precautions whenever possible.
Does it cause any challenges when the district and the health department appear to have different agendas?
I think it's something where we all have our priorities as organizations, and so it's definitely understandable that the schools are going to want to make sure that students are able to have every opportunity possible, and that's something that we really want to. At the end of the day, we also have to prioritize the public's health. That's our job, and so I think it's understandable that there's going to be differing opinions just when you have different end goals, but at the same time, we know that it's not one or the other. We can prioritize both, and it's something where you just have to create a balance. And I think having regular conversations and being in the same room, coming to the same table is really important so that you are able to take both sides and say, hey, how can we achieve something that benefits everyone and creates the most benefit for students while also keeping them safe?
The Missouri State High School Activities Association governs sports and school-related activities. I talked to them before Thanksgiving about winter sports, among other things. I asked specifically about continuing sports when health officials recommend against it.
The number one rule, if you will, is that the school follow their county ordinances or county orders, or even their city, and sometimes the city may be more restrictive than the county. So whatever the most local and most restrictive orders are, that's what we're telling our members to follow.
If schools do happen to shut down, will winter sports still be allowed to proceed, or would that be canceled due to the schools also being canceled?
That's going to be mostly a local school decision. If a school is completely shut down, then kind of like the snow day theory, if you're not in school on a snow day, then you probably cancel your activities and sporting events. So that part of it's going to be a local school decision. If there's something like what happened in the spring, where the governor shut down all of the schools and didn't allow anyone on campuses and those type of things, then that would be a different situation. But if a school chooses to close down due to numbers, then it would be up to that school what to do with their activities as well.
Could winter sports sort of affect how spring sports go?
There could be one thing that we try to do, at least we in our office, with the alternative scheduling and the alternate fall and the alternate spring. We try to minimize that overlap of where winter stops and spring starts because of all of the different activities that go on in the school building, especially during the spring with proms and graduations and end of the school year and those type things. So we try to minimize the carryover and those things as much as we can. But if there is any type of suspension to the winter, that may push into the beginning of the spring.
What flexibility is MSHA giving to schools that have closed down their schools? Like, are there going to be schedule changes for like those schools that happen to play one of them that's closed down?
There very well could be. Right now, schools have the option that we didn't change anything as far as the winter schedule goes. So if schools are closed or are not able to participate in the beginning, they can just pick up where they can, maybe even after Christmas break. We did see that in a lot of sports this fall, especially in the St. Louis area, where there were a number of schools that were able to practice, but they just weren't able to compete until later in the year, and they just picked up from there and went. So we did have a lot of schedule changes across the board in the fall. Probably anticipate seeing a few more of those in the winter as well for basketball and wrestling.
A Crispin sophomore named one of the 6 Youths of the Year for Boys and Girls Club in our area. Savion Lankford earned the honor from the Independence Unit of the club after writing an essay, going through an interview, and giving a speech.
I was very excited because I wrote my essay in I'll say a couple days, so I really didn't know it, so I messed up on it a couple times. So I didn't know if I won, but I had confidence in myself. So when I won, I was just very excited.
Among the perks he received so far for his win, Langford also received a brand new suit. He will now compete against the other 5 unit winners for the opportunity to win Youth of the Year for all of the Kansas City area. A big win for the ISD Construction Trades Capstone class. They took first place in the People's Choice vote of a national contest put on by the National Center for Construction and Education Research. Their video, done by members of the Digital Marketing Capstone class, received more than 1,400 votes. That made up 25% of all the votes cast in the competition. The win brings attention to the capstone program that brings students from all 3 high schools together.
We're going to get a big banner, we're going to hang out here on the wall, but it lets other people, other teachers in the district, and especially the freshmen and sophomores who are eligible to get in the program when they're a junior, that hey, we're down here, you know, we're open to all Independence High School students, we're doing a lot of cool things, and you know, just promoting our program and getting the word out of all the work we're doing over here. Our students work very hard over there. We're remodeling a house for the school district. We're building a house for Habitat for Humanity. We're out there at 10 degrees over the winter. We're out there in August when it's 95, sweating and working. So it was well deserved because they're doing a lot of hard work, hopefully learning a lot of skills.
Winning the vote also brings some prizes, including a $750 credit from DeWalt Tools that Mr. Amos says will help the program buy some new equipment. Building and racing Lego cars. Not something usually done or seen in schools, but that's exactly what some Truman Engineering students did last month. As part of their unit on simple machines, they built the cars. Each car came with a simple machine, such as gears or gear trains already included. The goal for the students? Optimize those simple machines to make the car go even faster.
It was pretty fun. I had a lot of fun building it, obviously, but it was cool because it's something that I've never really done in school before. I never learned this way, like more hands-on, I guess, and seeing the process of like building something and analyzing what we're doing as we're doing it.
From one hands-on class to another, Pathways to Teaching regularly places students into classrooms. Sometimes those classrooms hold a personal connection for the student. Van Horn senior David Ballard is working at Nowland Middle School with a teacher he had while attending there years ago. He spends afternoons with Sarah Simmons in a 6th grade social studies class. Last month he led his first lesson, an experience he most likely won't forget.
I think the medical definition is heart palpitations, but yeah, it was good. It was good. It was more attentive than I figured it would be. This opportunity is amazing. Easily to say, it's one of the coolest things I've ever done. I mean, I'm a student. I was in that seat, albeit on another floor, but I was in that seat. I had this teacher. I was learning these lessons, and it's amazing.
I hope that like just observing a little bit gives him an idea of like, is this a career that he wants to continue with? And if so, like what might that look like? Just give him a little heads up when he goes into his education classes in college next year. He's going to have an idea of the language that's used and, you know, those sort of methodology questions and philosophy. We have a lot of philosophy conversations about why I do what I do.
Ballard says he plans to study history and play football in college as he continues working toward becoming a teacher. A special Christmas surprise for one member of the ISD family.
Oh my gosh, there's money in there, you guys.
Cindy Davis, a food prep and Christmas cafeteria, was one of the several people around the country surprised by the CBS Evening News and a Secret Santa. As part of the surprise, she received $1,000 and a gold coin. It was part of an effort to recognize essential workers. Davis said it made a big impact in her life.
I got to help certain people, and my sister-in-law died not too long ago, and I got to help with that, and it's helped quite a bit. I've just been doing the things that I wanted to do that I knew I couldn't do before, like helping with the tombstone and helping the school, and just the rest I'm just kind of sitting on to see what I need.
Chrisman's secretary Monica Sullivan nominated Davis for the special recognition. Sullivan says, while she's proud of the work done by all essential workers throughout the pandemic, Davis's personal story and work ethic made her stand out. Families impacted economically by COVID can receive some help paying their utility bills, thanks to a federal program. Community Services League can pay electricity, water, and sewer bills directly to the City of Independence. It even works for past due bills, all the way back to March 1st. You must apply if you want the chance to receive the assistance. Do so quickly though, because all the funds must be granted by the end of this month. Go to the Community Services League's website for more information. Finally, a heads up as we look ahead to the next semester. A through K students at the middle school and high schools will return in person on Tuesday, January 5th. L through Z students will start out in distance learning. That's it for this Independent Network newscast. I'm Tyler Karras. Have a great break, everyone, and we'll see you next semester.